Welcome to the White and Blue Podcast. I'm Doug Goodnow, and my co-host is Colleen McGinnis. We are here to tell the interesting stories of Hillsdale College alumni, or more accurately, help them share their own stories. Here's a little bit about today's guest. Ian Redpath from the class of 1972 had a standout athletic career as a sprinter and a football player at Hillsdale College. The Detroit native was again on the fast track after graduation, becoming a successful lawyer before transitioning into a longtime career as a college professor. Also an avid soccer coach and supporter, learn more about one of the newest members of the Hillsdale College Athletic Hall of Fame. Ian, thank you for joining us today.
Oh, it's great to be here. Always love to be back at Hillsdale.
All right, Ian, how did you end up at Hillsdale?
Well, I ended up at Hillsdale. I was committed to go to Michigan, play football, run track. Then my senior year in high school, I managed to do an ACL, MCL, and PCL. And back in those days, that was like the end of your career.
Wow.
But I was too dumb. Nobody told me I couldn't just come back in the fall and play again. In fact, I ran track that spring. My rehab was I actually had a little iron boot that I attached to my shoe, and I would sit at my kitchen table just doing leg lifts with it. That was my rehab. And then back in the fall. Well, Michigan was kind of your... we don't know that we really are going to commit a scholarship to you under this circumstance. All of a sudden, out of the clear blue, I got a call from Muddy Waters. And Muddy says, hey, I've seen some tape on you. I've talked to some people. I did find out he got a call from one of the people at one of the coaches at Michigan. And said, hey, you might want to look at this kid. And he said, come on down. I want you to come and visit, and talked about the school. And Muddy just convinced me I should come. I came down, and the one thing I should mention was the chocolate pudding. No, seriously. We had Saga Foods at the time. Oh, yeah, we had Saga Foods at the time, and I have this sweet tooth because, in fact, I think I sent two of my dentist kids through college, but they had chocolate pudding. I couldn't stop.
So not the education, just the pudding.
And Warren Sprague, who was one of the coaches, he leaned over to me. He goes, you like that? I said, yeah, I do. It's really great. He goes, we aren't recruiting you as a defensive lineman. So it was Muddy Waters and chocolate pudding.
That's great. Most folks know Muddy Waters who are related to Hillsdale, but some don't. It's a legendary coach here at Hillsdale for many years. Lots of memories that I've heard about him over the years. But believe it or not, Ian, we've been through 2 catering services since Saga, and the students still call it Saga. It's still Saga. It persists to this day.
It's always going to be Saga, just like the cafeteria will be Saga Foods.
Yeah.
That's right. We're going to go over to Saga. So I think it'll always remain that for us old guys.
So you were initially recruited for football or both sports?
Both, football and track. But I was recruited here for football.
Originally, yeah.
The reality is back then, track wasn't as big here. Track tended to be, because we didn't have spring ball, so track was football players that wanted to keep in shape. So it was certainly, we had some good track athletes. We really did. But, we were populated significantly with just football players trying to keep in shape. Well, I did run track in high school and had some success. And so, I was just, I never thought about it. I was just going to run track. And so it was track season, and here we go. Although my freshman year, this is a little-known story. I'll tell you. So now I'm going to let you in on one. We were just practicing in the old stock field house, and the wrestling team was over practicing. And one of my roommates over at Coon Hall, that's where I was as a freshman, he was a wrestler. He ended up being captain of the wrestling team, very good wrestler. And we were talking, and you know how people sometimes you just start jawing back and forth. And so I ended up wrestling one of the kids. Well, I had wrestled in high school, and I pinned him. Big deal. I go back, I start practicing track. The next day, there's a knock at my door at Coon Hall. It's Big Daddy Goldsmith. Well, Big Daddy Goldsmith was a football coach and a wrestling coach. He goes, Redpath, you're wrestling tonight. I said, what?
Oh, my gosh.
He goes, you're wrestling tonight. I said, are you serious? He said, yeah, get down to the field house. We have a meet tonight against Western Ontario. I went, okay. I mean, what am I to say no, right? I'm going to go. So off I go. And he says, just do one thing. Don't get pinned. We're going to put you up. He put me in every upper weight he could put me in, but just don't get pinned. What he didn't tell me was that first time I was wrestling against the guy who was the Ontario provincial champion. I was begging the guy, because, being in shape for football is different than being in shape for track, which is different than being in shape in wrestling. And I will tell you, by the end, I was begging him, please pin me, put me out of my misery. But he didn't. So at least I did my job. I didn't get pinned.
Wow.
Yeah, as a member of the Hall of Fame committee, I didn't know that information, but that even makes you more worthy to be in our Hall of Fame. You did the wrestling on demand.
Well, I will tell you that how my wrestling career ended was we had a meet up in Grand Rapids, and my knee, and I sprained my knee. I'm on crutches. Muddy says, I want to talk to you. So I go in, and there's Big Daddy and Muddy. And Muddy looked at me, and he goes, are you here to wrestle or play football? Point made. My wrestling career is over.
Well, whether it was football or it was track, you were fast, super fast. And you were telling us off air here about, your family history. Your dad was quite an athlete. Tell us a little bit about, how you got involved in track and all the different sports when you were a kid.
Well, when I grew up, you just played. You went over, and it didn't matter what sport. It was, okay, we're all going to meet over at the school. We had a school behind me, Angel School, had a huge field. It was, okay, it's baseball season. We're playing baseball. It's football season. We're playing football. We would go out. We would line a football field out. We built goalposts. I mean, we did it up. But it was just natural to play sports. I got interested in track. My brother ran track and played football and wrestled. In fact, he was seated third in Division III NCAA in wrestling in his weight class, but he dislocated his elbow, so he wasn't able to complete the NCAA tournament. But my dad, he was an amazing man. He not only was a great human being, but he was a tremendous athlete. And a lot of the things I didn't know, and some of it I didn't know till he died, how great an athlete he was. He played professional football in Canada, in the CFL. He ran for Canada in the British Empire Games. He played for the Toronto Marlies in hockey. And he also was a catcher on the World Championship fast pitch softball team. And I think that's just a little of the sports he participated in. So it was just a natural thing. And I think one of the things that I see today, and I don't agree with it, is this: you got to specialize even as a little kid. Oh, you're going to play hockey. Oh, you're going to do soccer. You're going to do baseball. You specialize as a little kid. And besides the fact you get these repetitive injuries, right, let the kids be kids. Let them develop and decide what they want to do. That kid doesn't necessarily know what he wants to do. His parents may think they know what he wants to do, because every kid's going to get a soccer scholarship, a hockey scholarship. They're all getting Division I scholarships when they're young, and everything has to be organized. I hate driving by baseball field or a soccer field or just a field. It's football season. How come nobody's out here playing football? Where? Oh, it's got to be organized. I got to get a ride to practice, and I have to be organized. So I don't think that's a good thing. I think the idea where we just did everything, and you just kind of naturally went to the things that interest you the most, or the things that you were better at. And I played baseball when I was younger. I played baseball up until I was 17. I liked it, but I knew I wasn't going anywhere. And ran track, wrestled a little bit. It was just whatever it was.
We've mentioned a lot of sports. Sounds like you're quite an athlete, but you're also very involved in soccer. So it seems like even now, or throughout your career, you've been involved. So how did that come about, and what's your involvement in the soccer world?
Well, my involvement now is more on an administrative level.
Mm-hmm.
I'm an advisor to the state board for adult soccer in New York State. I kind of got into soccer. I don't even know how. Don't ask me how.
Was it later in life, or did you play soccer when you were young?
No. Well, we actually had tried to put together a soccer team when I was in high school. And we played one school in Birmingham Groves. They actually had a soccer team. They kept reminding us this isn't football.
Well, some say it is.
technically.
We were just a bunch of football players. Yes, we were playing football, not football. And then here we actually Chester Markle. He had an interest in soccer, and we'd go out and kick the ball around once in a while. But it just kind of developed, and I got into coaching kids.
Yeah.
And it just kind of took off from there. So I've been involved with the coaching at just about every level, Division III, Division I. I've coached high school. My youth team, which I would say was probably the best team in the country. I only say that because at our age group, we beat the Argentinian national champions, the Mexican national champions, the Canadian national champions, the team that won the American national championship the year before that. Not bad. We took a group of 17-year-old kids down and tied 0-0 the under-23 national team from Barbados. And then we beat the Trinidad Tobago national team. Got a bunch of 17-year-old kids. But they were great. We won 8 straight state championships.
Wow.
And that was quite an accomplishment. But my biggest accomplishment from that was the fact that the team that I had at 12, over half of them were still playing for me at age 20. Wow. That roster stayed and the development. My son was an excellent soccer player. He went to Finland for the World University Games for the U.S. national team, but he had some health issues that kind of ended that. So it's just been something that I've enjoyed. I was mentioning at one time that when I first went into coaching like that, and I should say I started coaching when I got out of school and I went to grad school. I got a phone call, and it was the coach at Ferndale High School, and he said, "Hey, Ian, come on over here and coach on our freshman team."
And this
Sure.
is soccer.
Why not? No, this is football.
Football, okay.
Yeah, come on over. Oh, okay. Why not? So I come over, and there's George Mack was the guy, great guy. He was the coach, and he goes, "Look, you take the offense, I'll take the defense. We're set." It was great. We ended up undefeated. So it was a really fun year. I've coached hockey. That was my job in coaching hockey. I loved it because I took the youth kids that weren't quite as good, and I just worked with them, trying to develop them, which I really enjoyed doing that. High school, it was kind of funny. I had a individual, a Jesuit that I know, came up to me one day at a dinner, and he said, "Do you know this guy?" I said, "Yeah, I know him." I said, "He used to work for me. I was the head of the Olympic Development Program for New York State. I also was head coach for both men and women adult soccer in New York State." And he says, "Do you know this person?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "I threw him off my staff because he's kind of an abusive character." He goes, "Yeah, well, he's coaching at the high school. We're going to fire him. Would you find us a coach?" I said, "Sure. This is Saturday. Will you find us a coach?" "Sure. I'll call around." I get in my office Monday morning. It's the athletic director from the Jesuit High School. He goes, "I understand you're taking over our soccer team."
Seems like you have a way of getting thrown into situations, right?
And I said, "Let me talk to my wife, but we'll see about it." But that was fun. They were 8-1 when I came in, and we finished the season 8-1 for the rest of the season. So
wow.
It was just a matter of the kids. They were great kids, really talented. Good example of how a coach can screw kids up. And that was the classic case. I didn't work any magic. The kids worked their own magic. They just needed the right direction. That's all.
We're going to take a quick break here, and we'll be right back with the White and Blue podcast. Now it's time for the Hillsdale History Minute, where we bring a slice of Hillsdale College history to the White and Blue podcast. For today's minute, we focus on professor and preacher Ransom Dunn. He served Hillsdale College for half a century, raising money to construct a new hilltop campus in the early 1850s by riding 6,000 miles on horseback on the Wisconsin and Minnesota frontier. It was largely through Dunn's efforts that Hillsdale would survive, while over 80% of colleges founded before the Civil War would not. His former residence was near our new Phi Sig Pavilion on campus.
great books, great people, and great ideas. Knowledge of these things is critical to becoming a well-educated human being. That's why I'd like to tell you about an easy and enjoyable way for you to listen and learn whenever and wherever you want. And that's through the Hillsdale Dialogues. If you haven't heard about the Dialogues, once a week, Hillsdale College President Larry Arnn joins radio veteran Hugh Hewitt to discuss topics of enduring relevance. From time to time, they also talk about current events, but always with an eye toward more fundamental truths. And they want you to listen in, to join a conversation like no other. The Hillsdale Dialogues are posted every Friday on podcast.hillsdale.edu. That's podcast.hillsdale.edu, or wherever you get your audio.
Welcome back to the White and Blue Podcast. Today we have Ian Redpath from the class of 1972 and one of our newest inductees into our Athletic Hall of Fame. So Ian, we talked about a little bit of your athletic prowess, your coaching, your career. Tell us about, post Hillsdale, your career path and what you've been doing since.
When I came out of Hillsdale, like many people, I wasn't totally sure what I wanted to do. And of course, people that don't know what they want to do usually go to law school. But I was kind of directed that way. That was kind of some of the advice I was getting, some of the direction. And, I said, okay, I'm going to apply. And one of my things that happened trying to go to Michigan, I got into Michigan Law School, and my dad had a heart attack, and I had to run his business. Well, they didn't have a night school, and his business was up in Pontiac. So I called the University of Detroit, and the admissions guy loved jocks. He said, I'll always take a chance on an athlete because I know that when they take what they've learned in athletics and apply it to law and a profession, they're going to succeed. He goes, come on down. I mean, this was literally like 2 weeks before the session started. As it turned out, there were a couple of my former teammates were in law school at the same time, ahead of me a little bit. So I started there. As I mentioned earlier, I started coaching while I was also going to school, and ended up, I had a very interesting opportunity. I applied as kind of a lark, thinking I would never get it. There was a position as a visiting professor of law at the University of Clermont-Ferrand in France. I applied for it. I got it. I'm going, okay. So I was married. My wife was she was a 74 grad. And so we made the decision, why not? So we moved to France, and I spent a year there teaching. Came back. It was a 1-year appointment. So came back and said, now what do I do? And literally, today you'd never do it because everything's online. But literally, my wife is from outside of Green Bay. I said, well, let's go look at living up in the UP, because I was admitted to the bar in Michigan. And I started literally door to door. And one guy says to me, he goes, oh, you were an ATO? I was an ATO. Oh, okay. Different schools, but all right. The next thing I know, he goes, why don't you come and work for me? The next thing I know, he calls me, goes, look, this sounds crazy, but I'm going to offer you a partnership. Let's buy out our senior partner.
Oh, wow.
And I'm just, I mean, like,
And you
I've
just
never
met the guy?
literally. And I said,
Oh my goodness.
okay, yeah. So there I am now with my name on the door. Partner, my name on the door. So it was a lot of pressure. Suddenly I've got people who are relying on me to be fed. I mean, that's a lot of pressure for a young guy.
What kind of law did you?
When you're up in the Upper Peninsula, you do a little bit of everything. Yes, you do a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
I stopped doing divorces. I did a divorce early on, and I got a phone call after the divorce settlement, and it was the state troopers. And of course, they love to give me a hard time. We had a great relationship. And he goes, Ian, he goes, did you represent this guy? I said, yeah. He goes, is he getting half the house in the divorce settlement? I said, yeah. He goes, we just arrested him last night. He was on his roof with a chainsaw.
Oh.
So I said, I don't think I want to do divorces anymore.
Was he splitting the house in half?
He was splitting it in half. He told her, I won't use the same language, but he said, if you want half the house, you can have it. And he's cutting the house. He's up on the roof. So I said, divorces aren't for me. And I kind of headed into business. And most of my work with businesses, I represented literally a significantly large number of the businesses, the corporations up in the, I'd say Marinette, Menominee, because it's across the river, because Marinette, Wisconsin. So then one day I just was reading, and there were UWGB, University of Wisconsin, Green Bay, was looking for a professor in law. I can do that. So I went down. They hired me on the spot, and I went back and told my partners, I said, I'm going back into teaching. And there I was. Then I got a call from Canisius University, college at the time, in Buffalo, and they made me an offer I couldn't refuse. But when I was at GB, I just started developing a real interest in tax. So I went back to the University of Wisconsin and got another degree in taxation. And so that's my specialty area. And I came back and just started teaching tax at GB. And that's basically what I teach. I teach tax, and I teach a lot of forensics, because on the side, so first, I still practice, but what I do primarily is you can't find me in the phone book. Lawyers and accountants call me when they have tax issues, then I consult with them on them, or I do litigation, especially like tax fraud litigation. So yeah, it's kind of varied. And then I had the opportunity to do some of the old days. It used to be doing live seminars, 8 hours a day. I knew I didn't want to be on the road anymore. When I still remember I was in St. Louis, and the taxi driver said, "What airline?" as we pulled up to the airport. I said, "What airline? I don't even know what city I'm going to." So he literally had to stop the taxi as I pulled out to figure out what city I was going to. I said, "I've been on the road too much doing this stuff." Now with webinars. So I do a lot of webinars, do a lot of programs for Edward Jones, Thomson Reuters. I had my own program with Thomson Reuters, my own monthly tax program, where I would bring in people from around the country to talk. And I appear as I'll use the term expert for want of a better term. That's what they call me. I just call myself eye candy. They bring me into, and same type of thing, questioning, talking about tax topics, whether it's something that's new, what's going on, what I like now. A lot of people talking about, well, what can happen, what might happen. We've got an election going on, so what are the Kamala's proposals and tax? What are Trump's? So I'll do that too, as well as just very pragmatic. What are the new rules that just came out on clean energy credits? So it keeps me up to date, keeps me active. So I kind of enjoy it, and plus I've become a ham, so I like that part of it. How
would you rate Kamala's tax policies versus Trump's?
How much time do you have?
We got all night.
It might take that. I just had this discussion with my class, and I use a great example for it. I wish I had time to go over the whole example, but when I hear someone say we're going to make corporations pay more tax, pay their fair share. Well, corporations don't pay tax. Consumers pay the tax. So you're raising the price of goods when you raise corporate taxes. Secondly, when you say millionaires and billionaires are going to pay their fair share, I want someone.
These are Kamala's words,
yes,
by the way.
They're her words. Yeah. I want someone to tell me, what is fair share? I mean,
who defines it?
The wealthiest people are paying almost all the taxes in the United States. Oh, the tax breaks are for the wealthy. Trump's tax breaks are for the wealthy. Well, if you don't pay tax, you can't get a tax break. I mean, how do you get a tax break if you're paying nothing? And that's the silliness of it. But people don't understand that. They listen to the 30-second soundbite. And, yes, tax breaks, most of the tax breaks will go to people who are, I'll use the term wealthy. I'm not even sure how to define that today. But they're the ones paying taxes. So the breaks are obviously going to the people who pay taxes. You can't give a tax if it's zero. If you're not paying tax, well, now over 50% of the population pays no tax. But those are the people that are voting by, those millionaires and billionaires are not paying their fair share. If you taxed the millionaires and billionaires in the United States 100% of your income, you're not even going to touch the deficit. You barely could balance the annual budget with that. So, it's just silliness and it's political rhetoric. If you're living in Manhattan, you're paying about 70% of your income if you take all taxes, property taxes, sales tax. When you put it all together, you're paying about 70% of your income. Well, how much should you have to pay? I mean, is that fair share? So no one ever wants to describe fair share. I just hate that term. I always use an example. I'll give you a quick one. I set up a family of 4, and I said, they pay tax. And here's Biff. Biff's a trust fund baby. Biff's never worked a day in his life. He just lives off his interest and dividends and his capital gains. And he pays no tax. He's got $1 million of income, pays no tax. And this poor working family with 2 children, she's a teacher. He works in the factory. They're paying tax. Is that fair? Well, you know what every student says. That's not fair. That's not fair. And I say, does anybody want to ask me a question? The question is, why? Does anybody want to know why? And I said, well, Biff gives 60% of his income to charity. Pick your charity, your favorite charity. I don't care what charity. It's your favorite charity. He takes a deduction. I said, Biff has invested in low-income housing. So the government says, we want people to invest because municipal housing in this country has been a total disaster. They want people to invest in low-income housing. I said, he go into the inner city. I use Buffalo because they're there. And he bought a building that he's rehabilitating. So he's getting a credit. And he started a business. And he's hiring people from economically disadvantaged groups. So he's getting a tax break. So when he puts all his breaks together, he pays no tax. Now, what's fair? What's not fair? Is it fair? Well, yes, but they can't take advantage of those breaks because they can take advantage of them. They just don't have the same level of income to take advantage of them. So I always say you should never talk about fairness unless you ask the why. Why is this person paying less tax? Why does the government generally has a reason why they encourage or discourage certain behavior, and you want people to invest. If we didn't have charitable contributions, you want the government to decide? Because I'll tell you what, this might shock you. The government's not going to give a hell of a lot of money to Hillsdale College. Right? I don't
think anyone wants the government to be the arbiter of fair.
Yeah. So if you took away charitable contributions, you're going to let the government do it? Because we know, as a matter of fact, that when tax rates go down, charitable contributions go down because people don't get as much of a benefit.
Right. Our tax code is set up very well for charities, and it's a great thing about America. Yeah. And it's a great thing for a development officer too.
Well,
here at Hillsdale,
let the market make the decision, right? That's the way I look at it. Let the market make the decision, and that's really what the government has decided in these areas. Let's let the market make the decision where they want to invest. Mm-hmm. You want to invest in heart? You want to invest in the American Lung Association? No, the government wants to give to the Arthritis Association this year, so your favorite charities get nothing. To me, you keep the government out of it. Mm-hmm. That's kind of a Hillsdale thing, isn't it?
It's absolutely a Hillsdale thing.
I can see why people and organizations, institutions, companies all across the country hire you to speak to hundreds and sometimes thousands of people on these issues.
Well, I appreciate that.
Sounds like you're passionate about them and very knowledgeable. So
my question is you're a tax expert. How hard is it to remain an expert? It has to, with all the changing, how much time do you have to put in to stay up to date with everything going on?
Well, it's funny because my students, I always tell them, you know what? There isn't a book of knowledge. I can't turn around on my shelf and pull out the book that has the answer to everything. I said, there's tens of thousands of pages. And I said, I'm on page 5. So, And I always try to get through them to learn concepts, because concepts do carry through. But I don't know anybody who knows everything about tax. And that's why people specialize, because you can't know everything. It's such a dynamic field. Every day, one of the first things I do when I get in the office is I read the dailies. What happened yesterday? What did the IRS do? Court cases. What's going on? What happened yesterday? And so, in fact, I do a program on that. Okay, what happened? Basically, what happened yesterday? We do one. What happened this week? I just recorded one yesterday. What happened the past week? So it changes. It's such a dynamic field, and I think that's why I always encourage people that tax is a great field if you want something that's dynamic, that's always changing. It's difficult. It's not an easy field. And it always requires research. You're always researching. I also tell them, look, clients think you know everything, and they don't like to see a bill that has a lot of research on it. And that's a real problem, because it's a lost leader. But the reality is we can't know everything off the top of our heads. I can rationalize answers through and then go back and look and say, okay, if I missed an exception here, is there something I'm missing? But I don't know anybody that knows everything there is to know about tax. I wish I could stand here and say, hey, I know everything there is to know. Nah, I'd be lying. And I know some very, very smart people in tax, and they'll tell you the exact same thing. That's why they're smart people in tax, because they'll tell you the same thing. I don't know everything. They know their limitations.
Well, I've never found tax and the tax code so interesting. So that's remarkable that you are able to make it so.
Well, I'll have to pass. Can I quote you to my students? my grad class coming up next week. I'll quote that.
I bet you're popular. One theme through our conversation, albeit brief, that I've picked up is that you seem to love coaching and teaching and working with people and improving lives. You had I'm sure, successful career as a law partner, and you went back to teaching. And that's a big commitment, to serving others. So tell us more about that. Why is that important to you?
Well, I think that comes from my father. And, when I grew up, my father, he would do anything for kids. And, they need a coach over here. Okay, off he'd go. Yeah, they'll need this. They need that. He started, which is now defunct, but he started the Oakland County Track Club. Well, that ended up being, at one time, one of the top track clubs in the country. We were going around the country running at high-level meets and doing extremely well. If a kid couldn't afford to go somewhere, and my dad was not wealthy. I could never have gone to Hillsdale if Muddy hadn't offered me a full scholarship. I'll be honest with you, that it didn't come from a family of money. But, if you needed money, if a kid needed help, my dad was going to do whatever he could to help him. And that was just the kind of guy he was. And they bought a place up in Parry Sound, Ontario, which is on the Ojibwe reservation. And the next thing you know, he's down there and he goes to the chief, he goes, Flora, why don't we start a girls softball team? Damn, if they didn't 3 years later win the provincial championship. So it was just the way he was. So really, to me, I just came from a family of that and just enjoying working with kids. And I had mentioned to you off air that, when my father passed away, there was this great article in the Detroit Free Press talking about just that. One of the comments that one of the kids made, he was always there. He was always there for us. We could always rely on him. And so, it's just kind of a family legacy. My brother was much the same way. He was a coach. He coached football and wrestling. Then he became principal at one of the schools in the Troy school system before he unfortunately passed away far too early. But he was very much the same way. So I just think it's something that our father, and I'm not saying he told us to do that. It was just we saw him. We lived it.
He modeled it, yeah.
Yeah, we just lived it. And so it was just a natural thing to want to do that. It's not something I don't think consciously about it. It's just, okay. And my wife said to me once, she goes, the kids on the soccer team, she goes, I know you're paying for them to go on some of these trips. Because she goes, I know, Johnny can't afford to go to Barbados. Johnny can't afford to go to Minnesota. Johnny can't afford to go to Florida. I know you're paying for Johnny, and I know you're paying for Jim, and I know you're paying for, and I just go, well, I don't know. Yeah, but as I told her once, I said, they're all going to pay me back. And I did. Sometimes I would say, I want you to come over, and I want you to detail my car. Yeah, it was a pretty expensive detail, but I had them paint my fence one time. So I did try to make them feel like they were having to work for it. Obviously, it cost a lot more, but I never thought about it. It wasn't. It was they needed it. I felt I could provide it. It's the same type of thing I grew up with my father doing. Mm-hmm. It's just not conscious. It's just there. It's part of it. It's part of, I guess, my being. And I say this, some of these things I really learned from Muddy. And Muddy was a great man. And Muddy and I had a very good relationship, and we stayed friends. I'm going to use the word friend years after he left Hillsdale. But, Muddy, and I mentioned this in the video for the Hall of Fame, one of the things that really kind of hit me was I was listening to one of my players, and he was trying to recruit this kid who actually ended up playing in the MLS, and he was an All-American at Indiana. And he was trying to get him to come and play with us on our summer team. And he was describing our team. And he goes, yeah, well, our team. And he stopped. And he didn't know I was there because I was in the bleachers and they were down below. And he goes, our team. He goes, we're not a team. We're a family. And he goes, Chief. He's called me Chief. He goes, yeah, Chief's like my dad. Mm. And that really hit me. It really did. And that's kind of something that I thought, I learned a lot of that from Muddy. Muddy you always felt like you were part of something. You always felt like you could come to Muddy with anything, and Muddy would be there for you, and Muddy would mete out punishment when it was necessary. But Muddy would also, and I know situations had come up with some players, and Muddy, okay, I'm going to straighten this up, and I'm going to straighten you up. So I learned a lot of that, I think from Muddy. And as I mentioned, initially when I first started coaching, I kind of had the Vince Lombardi approach, and then it hit me. I said, that's not right. I got to pattern myself after Muddy. I learned from one of the best, and I got to pattern myself after him. And, one of the things that I always told any team that I've coached, just before, the last thing I tell them when they go on the field, on the ice, whatever, it doesn't matter the sport, on the pitch, doesn't matter the sport. The last thing I always tell them is, have fun. Have fun.
That's always a great advice. Well, Ian, we really appreciate you coming on today. Congratulations on being inducted into the Hall of Fame, and hope you have a great visit back.
Oh, it's as I said, it's wonderful to be back. My wife is here. We've got she's got her Chi Omega 100-year celebration. So,
what is her name?
Pardon?
What is your wife's name?
Liz Eberline was her maiden name, and I've showing all my family where our brick is. I found it, so I know where it is now.
We'll look forward to meeting her.
And it's we celebrated our 50th wedding anniversary this year.
Congratulations!
And, we met.
That's
we
a
met
feat.
54 years ago in October, so it was. We're still together. We haven't killed each other yet.
Well, I'm 6 years in, and I know what a feat that is. So congrats. All right.
For Colleen McGinnis, this is Doug Goodnow thanking you for joining us on the White and Blue Podcast. And may that spirit long remain.